It's a strange thing, isn't it? Some of our most fond and beautiful memories come from being in the sun, watching our kids play sports, being out on summer vacations, just enjoying the beach and the lake and all that comes with it. But then you look in the mirror years later and you start to see these discolorations, sunspots, fine lines and wrinkles, leathery texture. And you notice these things are getting worse and worse year after year. But what if I told you you could keep those memories, but you don't have to have the sun damage? The truth is a huge part of skin aging is really just sun damage. And we know that 70, 80, 90% of the changes occurring to the skin occur because of sun. And as a result, this video is going to be very, very important for you to understand how you can reverse much of this damage that has happened over the years. And especially if you happen to be around my age, 50 something, you know those early days were spent mostly tanning and sitting there laying out by the pool. The damage comes later. But the good news is, no matter where you are on the spectrum, there's a lot we can do to reverse it. Hi, I'm Dr. Amir Karam, board-certified facial plastic surgeon and founder and creator of Karam MD Skin. And in this video, I'm going to share with you medically backed recommendations as well as my own personal experience in treating patients with sun damage over the years. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The way I set up this video is there are 5 categories that are commonly used to reverse sun damage. And what I did was I decided to rank them from 5 to 1, 5 being the least effective and 1 being the most effective. We're going to learn a lot about which treatments are right for you based on your skin type, based on your specific needs, whether or not you have melasma, and ultimately the pros and cons. So if you're ready to take back control of your skin, you're in the right place. So let's get started. So number 5, the least effective treatment for treating sun damage is microneedling. Now, you know from past videos, I love microneedling. What is microneedling? It's where you penetrate the skin with tiny little needles using a device. I'm not talking about RF microneedling. I'm not talking about Morpheus 8. I'm talking about straight microneedling. And why it's ineffective is because it doesn't do anything to treat discoloration. Discoloration is related to the formation of nests of melanin that come from deep within the skin and then rest in the epidermis and upper dermis. Melanin requires a totally different treatment to get rid of it and to prevent it from occurring in the first place. By penetrating the surface of the skin, you may break up some of these melanin nests, but you don't eliminate them. But what you do get with microneedling, which does play a role in the changes that occur to skin related to sun damage, is that you are stimulating collagen. When those little needles penetrate the skin, there's a molecular cascade that is signaled down to the fibroblasts within the dermis of the skin, which are the collagen-producing cells of the skin. And it tells the skin, hey, there's an injury, we need to mend this fence, if you will, and we need to stimulate collagen production, build and repair the skin again. That's a beautiful hack that happens. It helps improve the thickness of the skin, fine lines and wrinkles, but it does nothing to sunspots or discoloration. And that's why I gave it 5th on this particular list. But the upside is that it's great for any skin type, whether you're light skin, dark skin, or you have melasma. But you do need to consider this as an ongoing treatment, something that you do in a series and then continue on as a maintenance as you go forward. 1 or 2 treatments isn't going to do anything noticeable to the skin whatsoever. This is a long-term collagen play at best. All right, so let's talk about number 4, chemical peels. And there's a wide variety of them. There's TCA, there's phenol, there's alpha hydroxy acids, there's glycolic acids, there's a number of different peeling agents. And what these are doing is they interact chemically with the proteins within the skin. And once that protein is denatured, there is a separation that occurs depending on the depth of penetration of the chemical peel, and the depth of penetration is associated with the type of peel you're having done and the concentration of the peel. It goes from superficial, light, medium to deep, and the most popular are superficial and light and even medium. But what you're doing is basically you're separating the layers of the skin. Once that protein is denatured, the skin will then start to peel off as a dead layer. And when it occurs, whatever happens to be within that space, whether it's pigment, whether it's some fine lines, etc., will be physically removed. So the skin will then look much more refreshed. Now, there's also some peels that target a little bit deeper. They can go further down. So if the pigment happens to rest in the upper dermis, for example, you can remove it. But there's an inverse relationship between efficacy and downtime when it comes to chemical peels. The more superficial, the lower the downtime. Also, the least amount of change that you're going to see, because you're really just removing the upper layers of the epidermis. You'll get a freshening effect. Now you go down to the light and medium depth, some pigment may live in that particular layer, and once you peel it, that gets removed as well. So the skin can look significantly more clear, look more bright, and have improvement in its all-around discoloration because you've just physically removed a bunch of pigment along with it. Let's recap that. Superficial, least downtime, least effective. Let's go to the other extreme, medium depth, most effective, most downtime, and all around best results. We're not even going to talk about deep because that's very, very hard to recover, but it also follows the same trend. You're going to have to make a decision based on where you are in terms of the level of change, how much downtime you have, and which one of these peels you want to use. Now, I'm going to say a caveat. If you're going down the medium depth chemical peel route, you need to be in the presence of an expert in this particular area because it's not as common as doing some of the other treatments, and you really need to read the peel. That's a term that's used to be able to understand how deep you're going because you don't want to go too deep because then you could get into scarring and some of these other issues. Another caveat is if you have darker skin type, if you're olive complected or darker complexion, Fitzpatrick basically 3 and above, what you need to do is pre-treat your skin with a product like hydroquinone, botanical lighteners, retinol, something that is going to suppress the melanin production so that you don't get post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. That's really, really important. But ultimately, chemical peels can be very effective, but not necessarily the ones that have the least downtime associated with it. That's why I gave it a number 4. And if you do have melasma, stay away from chemical peels. I know some providers and some peels advertise towards melasma. Trust me, in the long run, this is not a good treatment for melasma. And in many ways, it could make it worse, which is exactly what you don't want to see happen when you already have some darkening patches that you're treating. Now, that's also a very, very important point I want to make. That is, if you are not sure whether you have melasma or discoloration, make sure you see a dermatologist because almost every treatment you're going to have is going to be affected by that. So you don't want to do things that are good for sunspots if you have melasma. So keep that point in mind and make sure you know this going forward. And I'll talk about melasma, what you can do later on. And I've actually posted a number of very, very good comprehensive videos on this topic. And my wife, who also has melasma, has been very successful at treating based on some of those recommendations. Another very important point to keep in mind when it comes to chemical peels is that the results don't last forever. What you're doing is it's basically raking the leaves, if you will, under the tree, but there's going to be more leaves that fall. So you're removing whatever you're removing, but you're not stopping the process. So keep that point in mind as we talk about the best treatments for skin aging and sun damage. Number 3, let's talk about lasers, right? So lasers is a little bit of a broader category because there are a number of type of lasers, categories. There's ablative lasers, non-ablative lasers. There's even things that are not technically lasers that a lot of people consider lasers that are used for sun damage. And I'm gonna break each one of these down. Now, I did a whole video discussing the different types of lasers and what they do exactly. So I'm not gonna totally go into it in that type of depth, but I'm gonna simply explain. Let's start with ablative lasers. An ablative laser means that it's removing tissue, similar to a chemical peel. You're physically removing it through the process, not of chemical dissociation that you do with chemical, but basically you're evaporating the tissue through a process of heat or a photochemical reaction, okay? So keep that in mind. The most common term you've heard is CO2 lasers. Erbium is another category, which is a little bit cooler and a little bit more precise with lower downtime. The concept here is that if you want to remove the surface of the skin, it's very difficult to do that with a CO2 laser, but it's much more precise to do that with an erbium. I personally prefer erbium. We have the Contour TRL in our practice, and the Contour TRL allows you to tune the laser according to the depth that you want to go to. So from light all the way to deep. And that's really, really important. CO2, you don't have as much control over that. Downtime is a little bit greater, but the net effect is roughly the same. By removing that layer of skin down to the upper dermis of the skin, if you want to go deep, you're getting the same type of an effect that you're getting with the chemical peel. Downside is, same thing, larger recovery according to how deep you do go, but ultimately it's a absolute beast when it comes to fine lines and wrinkles, vertical lines around the mouth, etc. So those changes that come from the elasticity and collagen changes in the skin are better treated with a laser than they are with a chemical peel. But you do get similar improvements in the discoloration. Again, whatever happened to be in the zone of laser treatment will be removed with that. So that's really important to keep in mind when it comes to the ablative laser category. Non-ablative lasers like Fraxel, for example, are not quite as effective as what we talked about. They can help with collagen stimulation, but they're not great at removing discoloration. The next category, which is also in the non-ablative category, it's IPL and BBL. IPL and BBL are not exactly lasers. What they are is broadband light across a spectrum that targets the chromophore. It means the target of the light that's being emitted from the IPL or BBL device. And in this case, it's going to be melanin. And let me just point out a quick note. BBL is specific to Cyton's version of the IPL. So I'm just going to simply use IPL from now on, but just know that you're getting something similar if you're getting IPL or BBL. An IPL is wonderful for breaking up pigmentation, which is the essence of the dark spots that you're seeing. It penetrates quite deep and it can break up the majority of these, but it needs to be done in a series. So you need to be doing between 3 to 5 at one series. And just like I said with the chemical peel, these changes aren't permanent. They're going to start to come back. Once you get them cleared, you're going to go on to a regimen that is every 3 months or 4 months, and you're going to keep that process going to continuously remove those new leaves that have fallen under the tree, in this case, pigment. That's a very important note because a lot of people get disappointed when they remove all this pigment and then they find themselves back to having a bunch of pigment again, sun damage, because the process doesn't discontinue just because you've removed them. This is a fantastic option for people who have any type of skin type. However, if you have darker skin types, Fitzpatrick 4, 5, and 6, you absolutely need to make sure you're in the hands of somebody who really knows what they're doing because you're much higher risk of burning. And that is a terrible complication when it comes to these type of lasers. So it's a little bit higher risk with darker skin types. And you really ultimately do need to know that you are in the hands of somebody who's truly an expert when it comes to this type of thing. Again, for melasma, keep this away from your skin. And as far as downtime, there's not much way of downtime other than the fact that the dark spots are going to get much more dark. There are these little coffee grounds that form on the skin, and that will slowly but surely dissipate over a period of a week or two after treatment. So definitely don't want to do this right before a major event, etc., but give yourself a little bit of time. It's not like you're terribly swollen, etc. You're just going to have some darkness that you can cover up with makeup potentially. So lasers are very versatile and a very, very good ultimate treatment, but again, they have their limitations and they have their specificity that you need to be aware of. Number 2, active skincare. What I mean by active is not all skincare are created equally, and not all the things that you buy, no matter how much you spend, is actually going to change your skin. Actives are things that are working literally at the level of the cells of the skin that are changing the behavior of the skin. The things that you're looking for when it comes to this particular category are things that are going to decrease the production of melanin and that are going to increase the production of collagen, the two changes that happen with skin aging and sun damage. At the helm of that category are two really important actives, retinoids and vitamin C. Both of these are multitasking. Both of these affect many different areas of skin aging, from improving collagen production, decreasing sun damage, and ultimately suppressing the production of melanin, which is what causes sunspots. Also within the active category are things like niacinamide, which plays a huge role in overall inflammation and improving sun damage, as well as a host of botanical lighteners, things like daisy flower, licorice root extract, azelaic acid. I mean, there's a number of things that are found in nature that actually have a direct role in decreasing and preventing the cascade that leads to the production of melanin. This is why this is so important, because if you are reducing the production of melanin, that means you don't produce as much. And therefore, whatever you do that eliminates the melanin deposits, the sunspots on the skin, you're not getting a new flow of melanin coming up and leading to new sunspots down the road. This is so key and so smart in my opinion, and this is a piece that so many people miss when they're treating their skin. So retinoids come into a variety of categories. There's retin A and there's retinol. Retin A's are things that you get through your doctor's prescription, and retinols are over the counter. They both work generally the same, although you can make the argument that retin A's, because they're a higher concentration, may work better, but at the same time, they're also more irritating and difficult to use, so as a result, fewer and fewer people can actually use them on a regular basis. Retinols can also be very difficult because of that same reason, but there are ways that you can modify the retinol and do it in a more modern way that your skin can actually tolerate it. And for those of you who've tried retinols in the past and simply couldn't get past using them 2 or 3 times a week, I'm going to talk to you about a solution on that one as well. Vitamin C falls into that same category. The higher the concentration, the less likely you are to be able to tolerate it. But it needs to be part of your routine if you're serious about sun protection and sun damage treatments. So because they're working at the cellular level, they're also stimulating the fibroblasts to make more collagen. So you're getting that collagen boost that you are hoping to get with all these other treatments that we just mentioned, but you're also getting the reduction in melanin production. It's really the best logical approach for these type of things. You can use them on any skin type, light or dark, wherever you are in the spectrum of skin aging, whether you're just trying to prevent or you are trying to reverse. These are extremely important, in my opinion, absolute essential part of your routine. Another skincare category that is not my favorite, and I'll explain why in a moment, is hydroquinone. Hydroquinone works on that melanin production cascade that all these other things are working on as well, but it's specific to that molecular pathway. The issue is that it's a prescription level drug that can only be used 3 to 6 months at a time because there's a potential for rebounding and skin irritation that happens when it's used regularly. So it's not necessarily a long-term solution. And that's why I wouldn't include it in a skincare routine that you want to use on an ongoing basis. But I have to mention it because you probably going to have some questions about, well, why not hydroquinone for sun damage? It's actually much more commonly used in treatment of melasma, etc., but it's definitely a pigment reducer, no doubt. So let me recap real quick. When it comes to skincare ingredients, you want to take note of this. Retinoids, whether it's retinol or retin A, vitamin C, niacinamide, and botanical lighteners are key in managing skin aging. Issue is, and I did a whole video on how to acclimate and manage the retinoids and retinol specifically, but a lot of people still can't get through the irritation aspect of it. And I wanted to solve that very problem because I'm extremely passionate about the use of these in terms of management, because if you can suppress at the origin of the changes that are happening and stimulate collagen at the source of where it's slowing down, then you've got the most genius approach to management of skin aging. But as I said, very, very few people know how to put together a proper routine that they can tolerate and use, because sometimes it becomes not only irritating, but it also becomes difficult to manage all these different steps. And sometimes you use one, but you don't use the other ones, etc. So here's the solution. So what I did was I formulated, literally took a 4-year process, my own skincare routine that used literally the most sophisticated top of the line retinols, vitamin C, etc. These are not everyday retinols, these are not everyday vitamin Cs, and put together all the botanical lighteners, niacinamide, etc. in a simple routine. Split the dose AM and PM so that your skin doesn't get overwhelmed with it. And these are slow release products that go into the skin, especially the retinol, that doesn't overwhelm the skin at one point. So you can use them every single day. So in addition to those actives, there's about another 20 plus actives in there, all of which are working synergistically in a formula that create the changes that so many people, over 10,000, 12,000 people who are using it every single day, are just absolutely loving it for. The product is the Karam MD Trifecta. You've probably heard about it before, and I've talked about it before. But when it comes to skin aging, consistency is the absolute key. And if it's simple, in this case, just 3 steps, a cleanser, and then 2 treatment steps, quench and illuminate, and you get all these things and you do it twice a day, your skin gets better and better month over month, it truly eliminates the need for chemical peels, lasers, etc. And in fact, in our practice, and this is zero exaggeration, we used to do 3 to 4 deep Erbium YAG contour TRLs every single week on our surgical patients. Nowadays, almost every surgical patient that I operate on has been on the trifecta for months, sometimes a year or so before their surgery. And literally, I do about 3 to 4 of these laser resurfacings a year. Their skin just simply looks that much better. Check out the website, learn more about it. But when it comes to reversing sun damage and skin aging, in my opinion, there is nothing better. There's no formulation better, there's no system that's better, easier, and more effective. So have a look at that, but that is the skincare approach that I would strongly recommend. And by the way, if you do get started on it, give yourself a solid 3 to 6 months to see the changes. Even though you're gonna see immediate changes, you're gonna see the best changes coming down month over month. So I've also had some issues with pigmentation growing up in Southern California. I started to see all this brownish pigmentation happening in my neck and around my temples. The trifecta and the use of sun protection is all that I did to address it. And literally within 6 months to a year, all that pigmentation was gone. This was in the early days when I was just getting started with the trifecta, and the results are incredible, and it's stayed away this entire time. And right now I don't really have any discoloration or pigmentation issues whatsoever. In addition, one of our customers who sent in their before and afters who suffered from serious melasma, and as you can see in 6 months, what an incredible difference the trifecta has made in terms of clarifying and improving their skin. The proof is in the pudding, honestly. At the end of the day, topical anti-pigmentation treatments is the way you treat sun damage and skin-related issues. That's your foundation. All right, so skincare is a huge one. Now, for all the reasons I just mentioned, but there's something that needs to be more foundational, and that is sun protection. If you are trying to make gains in your skin, no matter whether or not you're using skincare, trifecta, lasers, chemical peels, microneedling, whatever, it behooves you to slow down the skin aging process by decreasing the amount of sun exposure. Now, don't get upset and say, oh, but sun is so good for me, I need to get it. My wife is one of the biggest sun protection advocates out there. She protects her facial skin, she does, the hat, the mask, but she also gets the sun she needs for vitamin D conversion, for overall health and all that, by literally laying out in the sun 10, 15 minutes, almost every day, and getting some sun on her body. Not a ton, just enough to get the vitamin D conversion, the health benefits, without overdoing it. Now, that's just a lifestyle issue, but I want you to adhere to this. If you're trying to make gains, make sure you start with sun protection. Broad spectrum sunscreen, a hat, avoid being directly in the sun as much as possible, use shade as much as possible. And if you've got the desire to take it one level up, use the facial sun shield, the masks that my wife uses, etc. If you're just out and about running or just enjoying the outdoors and you don't really have a social reason to not wear it, definitely wear it, because the less sun you get, the less stimulation there is on those melanocytes to produce melanin, the less degradation there is to the collagen that's existing in your skin, and ultimately your skin's gonna look younger and better. This is a fact. This is nothing, that you can argue against or whatever, but at the end of the day, but it gives you the opportunity to enjoy your cake and eat it too. And my wife, certainly living in Southern California, San Diego, I do too. I mean, we're in the sun all the time, but we just take these measures. So start with that. And that's why it is number 1 in the list. All right, my friends. So in conclusion, there you have it. The top 5 things that you can do in order of priority, going from least to most, how you can reverse sun damage. If you want to get a head start, jump on this entire process. Here's a formula. Get serious with sun protection. Get the trifecta. Go get yourself some type of laser or a chemical peel. Wipe away a bunch of the pigment. Then you're gonna maintain the changes that you invested in the laser for with this trifecta or any other properly put together routine and sun protection. You're gonna get a lot more mileage out of the investment you made with those treatments. Once your skin is where you want it to be, then you can use some microneedling to stimulate collagen and improve the texture, etc. But don't use microneedling as a way of decreasing sun damage. Chemical peels and lasers and skincare are far better. I hope that puts everything in perspective. This is how I would approach it. This is how I approach it with my patients. This is the recommendations that I use, my wife uses. This is what I want you to feel empowered, knowing how to navigate and put together a plan that works for you. So if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel and make sure you share it with some friends and family. Let's get this word out so people can make good decisions for themselves. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this topic, make sure you subscribe to the Karam MD Journal. The link is right there in the description. And if there are treatments that you've been curious about or any questions you have about this video, make sure you drop them in the comments. I will try to answer as many of them as I possibly can. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Dr. Amir Karam.